Welcome to the Mental Health Bootcamp Podcast.
Woo!
We are 4 psychotherapists, 3 from Canada, 1 from the United States, serving you cutting edge mental health knowledge.
Or cutting hedges. Woo!
We're cutting edge knowledge. Yes. And I am Ryan Howes, a psychologist from Pasadena, California.
I'm Brooke Lewis, a registered clinical counselor from Vancouver, Canada.
I'm Chris Boyd, and also a clinical counselor from Vancouver.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, also a clinical counselor from Vancouver and Chris's younger sister.
Chris's younger sister, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back, Chris. We missed you last week, but your dad did a better job.
Yeah, you were voted off the island. Voted off the podcast.
I heard. Yeah, but you know what? I know what the link is. It's a recurring link. So I clicked on it tonight. You can't get rid of me.
You can't get, okay. You know how to get on the podcast. So you're back. You're back with us. Welcome back. A little disappointed you're not wearing a costume. We all kind of put ourselves out there last week with a nice Halloween costume. By the way, just want to throw this out here. I had a listener who listened to and watched actually the YouTube video of our podcast and said, you know what, that hat that I was wearing, that's not a Columbo thing, but Columbo is known for his trench coat. I was wearing a hat.
Oh.
I was wearing a hat that's more like a Sherlock Holmes hat, deerstalker hat, they call that. It was kind of like that. And so I totally missed the boat there. Both detectives, but I missed the accessories there. So
Yeah, you
I
got called out.
I got called out.
None of us knew.
No one knew. I was wrong, but it's okay. I don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect, everybody. We can make mistakes.
We don't.
And I appreciate being informed. Next time, if I want to be Columbo, I'll get a trench coat, or I'll call myself Sherlock in that hat. Okay.
Perfect.
Good to know. So what's the latest with you guys? Anything coming up this week, or anything interesting in your neck of the woods?
Remembrance Day.
Okay.
So another Canadian-American little shift. We both have our days. November 11th up here is called Remembrance Day, opposed to Ryan.
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
That's right.
Yeah. So everyone, it is a holiday. Like everyone gets the day off. Stat holiday, and
Stat.
So statutory, stat holiday, which means for people who have to work, they get paid extra time and a half.
Nice.
Typically.
We don't call those stat. That's interesting. Some people will call it a bank holiday or government holiday because a lot of those things are shut down here. A lot of people still, of course, need to work. Yep. Schools are usually closed that day. So yeah, there's and it's always interesting when it comes in the middle of the week like that, right?
Yeah. And typically we all go to the local legions. We have legions up here, and then or the legions will host a ceremony, like perhaps a parade, and then we go to the local cenotaph for a ceremony, and people lay wreaths. Last year in my city where I was, they did a 21 gun salute, which was actually like setting off a cannon 21 times.
Wow.
It was I'm glad that I went. It was quite the experience just to feel the vibrations through your body and there were so many people, you couldn't see when the cannon was going to go off. So it was actually, the nervous system, you can only imagine what it would have been like to actually be in war.
Wow. That's interesting. So I got to say, did you say word cenotaph? What's that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a memorial,
it's like a statue.
A statue or so each city, so all the towns and cities have them to honor our veterans.
Sure. Yes, we definitely have memorials in our cities as well. Usually list the names of people who were lost in various wars, that sort of thing. But maybe it's called a cenotaph here, and I just never knew. But that's a cool name.
So to clarify, a cenotaph is an empty tomb or a monument erected in honor of a person or group of people whose remains are elsewhere.
There it is.
There you go.
Yes, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're also up in Canada observing, obviously, quite the week down there for our American friends. And so hopefully that everything gets resolved. And
Yes.
but I'm sure a bit of stress down there for some of our American listeners as they're trying to figure out the resolution to this election, right?
I saw a nice post online. Someone was saying that, click here to claim your emotional support Canadian, because you guys have been kind enough to provide emotional support for we Americans who may be experiencing a bit of stress at this time. So,
Yeah, the uncertainty, right?
yes.
Yeah, being in limbo is not fun. So hopefully that gets resolved. And
it's not fun, but I'm so glad to have 3 plus, I guess maybe your dad could count too, is 3 emotional support Canadians. If you accept the job, that is.
We do.
Thank you very
I
much.
assume.
We do.
That's great. Yes, might need it. It's been a stressful time down here for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So, gosh, I've got to say, you guys, we've been doing this podcast now for 4 months. I think this is our 16th episode. And I've had a good time. I was just looking over the variety of episodes we've had. We've talked about a lot of different topics. Last week was procrastination, which is cool. We've talked about grief and sensitivity and any number of things.
Self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance, sleep hygiene. We've gone through a lot of different things. Twice even. We kind of nipped that a couple times. That's true. But yes, so I think we may be running out of topics. I think we've done 16. I think that's about all there is to talk about, right? Nothing more regarding mental health, right?
we did it. We solved it. All right. So this is our last podcast then, eh?
This
So
is
we
our
should go
farewell.
around and say what we're grateful for and what our favorite moment was, and then we'll sign off.
Oh no, let's not trigger any abandonment issues. We're definitely not done talking about mental health. There are so many things to talk about.
So many. Yeah.
So very many things, and we are looking forward to continuing. I've had a blast. And getting some good feedback from people who say, yeah, it's kind of fun. It feels like they're kind of listening in on, kind of eavesdropping on a conversation between a bunch of therapists talking about a topic. So that's
Perfect.
Cool.
that's exactly what we're hoping for.
Thanks for eavesdropping, listeners.
Yeah. That's kind of it's kind of how we developed it in the first place. We're like, hey, we've been having these meetings actually for several years because of the mental health boot camp, www.mentalhealthbootcamp.com, our main project. And we've been having these weekly Zoom calls really for 3 years, 3.5, 4 years, something like that. So we're like, why don't we just record some of these? So that's what we're doing. So glad you guys like it. If you have any topic suggestions, please write to us, info@mentalhealthbootcamp, and we would be happy to address your questions or concerns. And we want to see it spread around the globe. We get a feed, a little bit of data from the podcast site. We don't have anyone's information. We don't have any personal information at all. Don't worry about that.
Except for you, Gary, in Idaho. We know all about you.
That is not true. There maybe Gary is thinking I know. But all we do see is that we had 3 listeners in South Dakota, and we had someone from Peru and someone from Sweden, that sort of thing. So that's kind of fun to be able to look at that and go, wow, we're spreading around the globe. So if you feel inclined, please let a friend or family member know that we're out there, and we would love to increase our listeners. It'd be fun.
Indeed.
So there's my plugs. There's my commercial. That's enough.
Well done.
So maybe we should get to our main task here, which is the actual ambush, where one of us knows what the topic is. The other 3 don't know what it is, and you're just going to drop it on us. So who gets it this week?
That would be me. So let me cue it up here.
Okay.
And let's see here. Send to. Actually, I had it queued up a second ago. Uh-oh.
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 Uh-oh. Oh, here it is. Okay, sent.
Okay. Okay.
Is it sleep hygiene?
For three.
Yes.
He's
Could
really
just
thinking
be-
about it.
It could be just deja vu and we just talk about everything we've already talked about.
Is it
Yeah.
procrastination because you weren't here?
Yeah,
You didn't know
right.
that was the topic?
Yeah, maybe that's it. No, we're going to talk about self-care. No, that was our first episode. I would read this, but there's a word here that I don't know how to pronounce it.
Is it Canadian? Is that
Okay, let me look over it
Hold
again.
on, hold on. I mean, I'll read it. It's spelled out BEHAVIOUR. I don't know what that means.
Oh, I see. It's behavior.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
It's a good old Canadian spelling of behavior.
Okay, enough jokes aside. Here we go. When would an unhealthy behavior be considered an addiction? Why do some people become addicted and others do not? Advice for those dealing with an addiction. Wow, we're diving right into the addiction topic. This is a big one in the world of mental health, isn't it?
huge?
Kind of there's a good follow-up to the bad habit or just habits,
Yeah.
that we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we're talking bad habits, really. We were diving right into that. When would unhealthy
Yeah, when they
behavior
become
an addiction, right? So, okay, all of you addiction experts, what do we know about this?
Oh man, there's so
yes,
much.
you addiction experts. Let's hear it.
There's so much. So you could take that in a few ways, right? Because when an unhealthy behavior, when you start to develop urges or desires that become almost compulsive, like you're losing control over that urge or desire, but that urge or desire might be physiological or psychological. And then when that happens, there's going to be interruption or impairment of functioning in one or more domains or areas of your life. And so when that compulsion becomes too much and it's starting to negatively impact your life, then we really have to start looking at that, because that means you're ignoring the consequences of that behavior, and that behavior is actually ruining you.
Okay, when you talk about domains of your life, tell me what that might mean, Brooke.
Great question. Yeah, so that could be your social life, that could be your work life, that could be your family life, that could be your spiritual life if you have a strong religion community that you belong to.
Or physical well-being.
Physical well-being would be
health. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there's consequences that, we're now ignoring those consequences to fill the urge or desire of use, then I would say that's when we're entering the realm of addiction. I think the word addiction even sometimes is a tough word to use. I think we're almost making a swing more to substance misuse versus addiction sometimes, because not only are chemicals addictive, but behaviors are addictive. Mm-hmm. So chemicals, I mean, we might have an alcohol addiction, but there could also be shopping, internet, gaming, pornography, self-harm.
Which?
Eating.
Yeah.
Food, sure. Exercise.
Over-exercising.
Yeah.
That could be something as well, right?
So, I'm curious, Brooke, like, you mentioned like an awareness of the impairment on the key parts of your life, but there are some folks out there that don't realize that it's impairing their life, or they're in denial of that, right? What we would refer to as pre-contemplative in terms of an addictive behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not, I guess the awareness, it's the fact that there are consequences happening.
Yeah.
So maybe you lose your job, or you have been written up twice, not the third time to get you fired. You keep arguing with your spouse about the problem, whether it's gaming too much or if it's alcohol, and these arguments with your spouse are becoming more frequent and regular or more intense. Your children are no longer connecting with you. You haven't seen your friends in a while. So, if
there's evidence
like
smoking,
of it. Yeah, there might be physiological things to some of these as well, right? So interrupting your sleeping or your eating, or maybe you're coughing up tar Maybe you're getting tremors in the morning because you're drinking too much in the night before. Like there could be physiological
Sure.
interruptions too.
Yeah, no, for sure.
A couple thoughts I want to throw out there just as we're kind of sorting through this topic.
Yeah.
There's a lot to cover. One is that there's a growing group of people out there talking about the fact that even with some of the behavioral addictions, they could also be qualified as chemical because of the neurotransmitters that people are getting, the dopamine hit they're getting, the serotonin they feel, this spark of good feeling when you gamble and you get a jackpot or you get a 21, like boom, there's this little hit of adrenaline that you get that feels good, and so people get addicted to that, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
which would be the physiological component of it, right? So I would have two classifications, like chemical or behavioral, being like, where is the source of that hit coming from?
Sure.
Where is the source of the reward system, you know?
Sure. And the second point I wanted to make is that a lot of times when talking about addiction, there are two other areas that people talk about when talking about like dependency on a chemical, usually, and that would be tolerance and withdrawal. So if someone has a dependency on a drug, let's say I'm really into whatever it might be,
The opiates, maybe.
opiates. We'll say an opiate. Say I'm taking oxy for pain, and I develop a tolerance, which means really what that means is my body now absorbs. I'm taking 10 milligrams, whatever that the measure might be, and then suddenly 10 doesn't really work quite as much anymore. So now I need to up it to 20, and then I go up to 30, then I go up to 40, right? So then my body is saying I need more in order to get the same effect. And then the second part of that is the degree of withdrawal that you feel. Like, let's say I need to stop now. You know, people often talk about quitting smoking and how hard that is because of the withdrawal, the difficulty that is, the physical symptoms they feel and the psychological symptoms they feel at not having that to go to.
And they can be so intense too, in terms of that withdrawal, like opiates, for instance. If you are taking it steady for a while and increasing the dosage of whatever that drug might be, then if you stop taking it, you actually get physically sick, right?
Sure.
It could be the withdrawal can be vicious.
Could be deadly in some cases.
It can be deadly. Yeah, absolutely. You
can.
could die from it far beyond just craving and being agitated and whatever that might be, right?
Right. So there's all these terms we're talking about here. We got tolerance, withdrawal, dependency, addiction, the chemicals and the behaviors, all of this that's going on. But the question that our colleague here shared was, when would an unhealthy behavior be considered an addiction? So is there a line that we can draw there, or something at least to be aware of, that this unhealthy behavior may be actually an addiction? And Brooke, you kind of mentioned that the domains of a person's life being affected, right?
Would it maybe be the amount of time that is spent on that specific thing? And if that is then taken away from other areas significantly, whether it's seeping into work life or family life noticeably, right? Because we all have habits, and you might do something on a daily basis, but if it maybe starts to be longer and longer, or you're starting to do other important life tasks less, that's probably going to be what's going on?
Yeah, it's interesting because I find this it's more difficult to tease out when it's something that a lot of society considers healthy, right? So you got someone who works out obsessively, right? They working out 4 hours a day. I'm really busting my butt to get in great shape, and they can say, well, look, I'm very healthy. I'm the picture of health now, and I'm taking care of myself. What's wrong with that? But I guess it's looking at the different domains in a person's life and saying, well, how are your relationships doing? How's your work life? How are you resting?
And how are you responding when you're not able
I was just going
to do that workout?
There you go.
Yeah.
Joanna, do you want to expand on maybe?
No, you just took the thought. What I had in terms of, that if they're not able to do that thing, if it starts to cause some distress, or if there's, if they're not able to do that workout, like you said, are they really upset about it? Are they going to maybe be thinking about it more, or just it's kind of occupying their mind? Maybe. There's
a term we talked about before. Maybe it was in episode 1. We were talking about food. It's orthorexia.
Yes.
Right. And this idea orthorexia, which is this condition of being so hyper focused on nutrition that it can actually kind of disrupt the other domains of your life, right?
Hmm.
Brooke, do you have some more insight into that?
Yeah, so orthorexia isn't a formal eating disorder by any means. It's not in our big diagnostic book. So it's not a formal thing, but the theory behind it is more like an obsession with eating clean, quote unquote, clean or pure foods that are like natural, organic, healthy, deemed healthy, and that's paired with a bunch of other things such as an intense fear of gaining weight, but it's also paired with like a sense of purity and almost sometimes looking down on others if they aren't able to do those behaviors. So there's strong judgment towards foods that don't fall into those categories.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I see. I hear a lot. I'm not vegan myself, but I hear that vegans get a hard time sometimes because they're perceived to be kind of judgmental about that. Whether or not they are, I don't know. But some people
Yeah.
say that might be one of these
Mhm.
stereotypes there, right?
So all of a sudden, if the person who is now eating only pure and organic, I have a friend who likes to eat really well, and but he said it really well. He's like, you know what, I'm not going to be a jerk about it. Like he does follow certain dietary restrictions for 80% of his life. He's like, I'm not going to be a jerk about it. If I go to someone's house, I'm going to eat whatever they're like. If I'm going for
Sure.
dinner, I'm going to eat what they're serving. If I'm at
Sure.
a friend's birthday party, I'm going to eat the birthday cake because that's normal behavior. I'm not going to impose that, and I'm not going to preach, or now he doesn't quite preach, all the different things or reasons why these foods are bad or these ones are better than others, right? But when it starts getting to that point, we want to take a look at that. What is the function of that? Or if you can't go out to eat with your friends for a special
Yes.
meal because you're worried about the contents of the food, like that might be a bit of a flag. Might not,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean addiction, but
For
Okay.
sure. But it also kind of highlights how it can impact your social connections, right? Because if you're feeling judged by someone else's decisions or their nutritional plan, then that can create some tension or friction.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we've come to kind of an idea of what addiction might be, and when something might become an addiction or an unhealthy, and when an unhealthy behavior could become an addiction. It's basically when there's an impairment happening to either yourself or to the people around you, and you might recognize that, you might not. Someone else may have to point that out to you. You know, hey, maybe this is not actually helping the balance in your life.
but
Why?
there's a choice towards the thing causing the distress. I think that's
Yes.
a key part to it. So
Okay.
even though there's negative consequences, there's almost like an ignoring of those consequences. It may be conscious or subconscious for the use of the behavior or the substance. Like, yeah, my mom's always mad at me, but I'm gonna keep playing video games anyway.
I'm
Sure.
going into debt, but I'm going to keep gambling.
I'm going into debt, but you know what? I can't stop. I'm gonna keep gambling.
Yeah.
There's another component to this too, which I think a lot of the really addiction focused therapists will get into, which is that the addiction itself can serve a function for a lot of people in terms of
Absolutely.
it's a way to avoid something else oftentimes, or a way to mask or numb something else in
Yeah.
their life. I'm very upset with one area of my life, my work life or my relationships or something like that, but I can't really face all that emotion, or it feels too messy, or it feels like it won't get me anywhere. So I turn to an addiction instead because it helps me to kind of avoid it and
Yeah.
numb out, right?
No, it's a good point. It often serves a purpose at some point, right?
Yeah. It seems to serve a purpose. And as I tell some of my clients, one of the hard parts of some of these addictions, or kicking some of these addictions, is they work. Like if what you're wanting is an escape from your reality, yeah, great. You can, getting high or drinking a lot or getting, swept into shopaholic behavior or gambling or something like that, it does effectively take you out of those real problems for a while, temporarily. The problem is then you wake up the next day and you still have those problems to face, and maybe you have other consequences now you're broke, or you're hungover, or your body's damaged or something like that.
Yeah, true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so gosh, I've thought of another question that maybe we don't have time to get into, which is, since we're
What is
talking,
Big topic. This is a big topic.
it is a big topic, but this would be kind of distinguishing between addictive behavior and like obsessive compulsive behavior, right?
Mhm.
Oh, whole different gamut. Yeah.
A whole different gamut. Tell me, is there a simple way to put this? Because we've got more questions to ask here.
I don't think that there is, and I think it's a highly that is a very important question, and one that is being explored, I think, amongst like academics in the field, because there is a lot of talk of that. When are eating disorders actually obsessive compulsive disorders? Not saying eating disorders are addictions, but do they fall into that realm as well? So obsessive compulsive disorder is when you have an obsession and then you need to follow a ritual to release the tension from the obsession, right? Like there's thoughts and rituals, and the rituals are typically behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if they don't go in that certain way, then there's high levels of distress. Yeah.
Which is interesting, because stress is often a common component, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot
In
of it
some
boils down to
cases.
distress tolerance, right? Like, are you comfortable feeling uncomfortable feelings?
Yeah.
And if you're not, then often we turn to other things. And if that works well, then we keep turning to that thing. And if we live a chaotic life, we're going to turn to that thing more and more and more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're going to get into this in the next question here, but I think there might be another commonality there.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how to put this, but it feels to me like there's a distinguishing factor from like an OCD, true obsessive behavior, is that it's coming from someplace, they're kind of driven by a motor deep down inside. It's not often environmentally caused. It's something that's really truly internal. Whereas addictive behavior, I believe, can be learned. And I guess this is where we're going to be going in this next part of the question. So question 2, why do some people become addicted and others do not? So where does that come from?
So we always want to look at nature and nurture, right? So there's biological aspects here, genetic aspects, and epigenetics as well, and experiential temperament. Up here, we have a psychiatrist named Gabor Mate, and he focuses a lot on trauma, and how he swears, or he's very confident, that those who are suffering from addiction, there tends to be trauma in their history. So he's made that kind of link through his research, working with a lot of addicted people down in the downtown east side, like a lower income area of Vancouver.
It's actually the poorest postal code, I think, in the world.
Really?
Or North America.
Or is it North America?
Yeah,
I read that somewhere where it's like a crazy stat on that. So there's actually, I think the last time they tried to track the number of people, it was 8,500 residents within a very small blockage, and they're all homeless people.
Wow.
Yeah,
and I think you guys,
so it's like a city within a city, but that there would be a huge black number because there would be a bunch of people they couldn't track.
I think you guys mentioned a few months ago that there was actually a stat that came out that there were more people in Vancouver, maybe all of Canada, dying of addiction than dying of COVID.
Oh yeah. So last month, I think it was, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 175 people died last month of fentanyl overdose or drug overdose.
Like the total since even the pandemic began is like atrocious.
Yeah, we're in thousands of people have died just this year from drug overdose. So we have a huge substance misuse, addiction concern happening up here.
Oh, okay. And to bring it back to what Chris was saying, trauma oftentimes is at I don't know if it's at the root of it, but it's often at least correlated with drug use, right?
And I would throw out there that for some of the OCD clients I've worked with too, often there's major challenges or traumas that they've experienced too in certain circumstances. So I guess, again, delving into that other topic and comparing the two, I'm curious to know what that connection is.
Mhm.
It just go ahead, Brooke.
No, go.
Interesting thing when we talk about nature nurture, especially things like drug abuse and even domestic violence and things like that. People will say, well, it runs in the family, and they'll say that's evidence for a genetic cause, like it's in your DNA, like you're going to be more abusive or you're going to be have more drug abuse. But we also have to consider that if it runs in the family, it's also environmental. You're also witnessing that as a child, right? This is how, mom and dad dealt with their stress by having a drink every night, or when dad got angry, he beat up mom or something like that. So there's both nature and nurture going on with this oftentimes. And so it's kind of hard to tease out like what's really at play here, right?
Yeah, it's always both, isn't it? Degrees of either one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree that underneath there's probably some trauma back there, and nature nurture, I completely agree with that. An interesting question to me is like, well, there's going to be people who go through trauma that don't develop an addiction.
Which is our question, yeah.
So is it like who develops the addiction or not, or who gets through the trauma in a different way, right? Like, so why is it that some traumas evolve into addiction and some traumas evolve?
Yeah, so I think anytime we
recovery or whatever.
Post-traumatic growth, right?
And that's exactly it. So then looking at environmental supports, community support, resiliency factors.
Right.
I feel like there's probably a lot of sense of belonging and connection into your like social group or your family. Are you being outcasted? Are you alone? Are you able to reach out for support? Are there underlying health issues when you have your trauma? So are you already running anxious? Do you already have, what's your attachment style when you've had that trauma?
Yeah. So yeah, a good point is it's always a multivariate approach, right? It's multiple variables here that we have to take into account.
Okay. So inconclusive, why do some people become addicted and others do not? I mean, nature, nurture, we've got genetic factors, we've got environmental factors, we have personality differences, things like that.
Yeah, resiliency.
Yeah. Openness to change might be one too, or willingness to get help.
Yeah, availability of support, of resources, support systems, right?
I think that might be something too.
Education,
Well, unfortunately,
poverty as well.
Yeah, poverty, there's a lot of addiction, but there's also a lot of addiction in persons who are wealthy. They have the funds to purchase, right?
Yes, sure.
If we're talking about chemical or drug or alcohol.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I was speaking with somebody about like high schools in the area and like, how safe are they from, regarding drug use and that sort of thing. And saying, look, there's the higher class high schools and lower class high schools. And the only difference between them is the higher class high schools are using more expensive drugs. They're all using this, they're all using something, but it's just, a higher price tag. So
maybe also when use started, might have a bit of an impact there too, including secondhand use. So if parents are smoking marijuana around children, that probably is going to have an impact, not just learned behavior, but that chemical, the secondhand smoke of that chemical or smoking is going into their system, which may be priming them later on for that use.
So true.
Right? Maybe. Yeah.
Yes. I also, I think there are other things that can kind of prime people for that as well. I think about like slot machines and kind of the intermittent reinforcement that people get from that. Intermittent reinforcement means that sometimes you're rewarded, sometimes you're not. It's like a slot machine. Sometimes the payout's big, sometimes it's not. But the whole idea is, well, if you keep playing, you tell yourself, well, if I keep playing, then I'll get something, right? Then I'll get the big reward. And we have a lot of things these days that have this kind of intermittent reinforcement idea. Video games are that way.
Social media.
Social media, yes.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's a huge one,
Like,
right?
can we even talk about internet addiction when it's not gaming addiction? And when are we
Right.
going to actually start addressing that?
Or even just like being on your phone all the time
Exactly.
too. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I would call internet addiction, because chances are they're not playing like solitaire on a solitaire app.
You never know. Some people love their gaming apps and just are on there a lot, but you're right. It tends to be more internet.
Sure.
Like, whether it's social media or gaming or whatnot, but the phone addiction,
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
big one.
I think there's a huge phone internet addiction going on like in our culture right now. Massive. And I think it's leading to a lot of depression and anxiety symptoms, a lot of procrastination, disconnection. If we look at it, there's like schoolwork isn't being done for teenagers. They're not
Yep.
connecting with their friends face to face. They're relying on their emotional upswings are getting bigger. They're isolating themselves more. Like,
Very true. Very true. I mean,
and the parents are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
there's a lot of research that came out recently about how, sadly, teenage female suicidality had a spike, rose at the same rate as social media use, right?
Yeah,
There's a
about
big
that too.
big problem there. And I'll make a plug for a book for one of my buddies. It's called "The Game Is Playing Your Kid" by Joe Dilley, which is about how the whole gaming industry is about trying to hook people in. Really, it's about pulling you in and getting more of your time, so that you can have more. They can get more money out of that, basically, right? So they're really focused on getting more out of more usage out of your kids.
The Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, talks about that as well.
There we
And
go.
it's the same concept, just kind of going into it a bit more detail. So they're actually talking to the persons who have worked in these companies,
Yeah.
the big social network companies, and talking to them. And they're like, yeah, there's no ethics involved in this. There are no ethics committees. So these things are being built to be more addictive, to keep you on longer, to get more of your money.
Wow. That's wild.
So they're like actively forming addiction.
Do you think too, like just the instant gratification of a lot of these things being at our fingertips too, or just it kind of gets you going, or for kids or for youth or even adults, they might get bored more easily, or it might take more and more to kind of get that satisfaction, right? Or that hit that you'd get right from
You build a tolerance.
Yeah.
Tolerance. There we go.
You start to build a tolerance.
Or you just, you start to want, or you start to kind of crave that, or you can't really help. Yeah. Well, it's also habits too. Like even pick up our phone, or if you're sitting around with people, it's always nice to go somewhere where there's no reception. Because then people can't, in a lull in conversation, you can't just pick up your phone, because it's amazing how you just do that without thinking, and all of a sudden that person's somewhere else.
So just even having the phones there, right? Like it's, when
Yeah.
I was younger, I had a roommate. So I was probably, I don't know, 24 or 25, and she was 19 or 20. And I'm not really attached to my phone. I left my phone at home, and I like went to the gym and went grocery shopping and came home. And she was like in a frenzy. She was so anxious. She was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Did anything happen? Like, where were you? Like, I was about to call the police. I was like, I've been gone for 2 hours. Like, is everything okay? She's like, you left your phone here. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I did. I left my phone because I don't really care if I have my phone.
She was actually off playing video games for 2 hours, neglecting her obligations that day.
I was gone. But yeah, she thought something really, really bad happened because I didn't bring my phone with me.
Yeah.
Well,
Joanne
guys,
and I. Oh, go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say we're running a little shorter on time, and so we should probably get to our final question here. But I don't want to take away from your There's a little point there.
I was saying we have in our family we have a phrase that Joanne and I came up with called BIP, being present. So if someone picks up their phone and they're not engaging, then you call them out to go BIP, BIP. Just a reminder to say, oh, okay, I got to be engaged in what's going on here. Not
Call each
off.
other out.
Yeah, call each other out.
Well, I'm glad I didn't fully interrupt that point because that is fantastic. So you guys actually will walk around your house and say "bip," you know?
BIP.
It's Chris and I usually just use it with each other. We've told the rest of the
Yeah.
family about it, but Chris and I are mostly calling to each other. So even if it annoys the other person, we'll be like "bip," and we'll be like, "I'm just looking at something." It's like "nope, bip."
I'm just gambling. Leave me alone.
I just can't.
I'm just connecting with other people who are not here.
Let me put this Amazon order in. She'll be 3 seconds.
Bip.
Yeah.
Advice for those dealing with an addiction. Let's throw out our advice. We're going to start with BIP. Tell people to be in the present. There we go. What else? If you're dealing with addiction, maybe if someone you love is dealing with an addiction, anything we can do for them?
For those being in addiction, this is like really, 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 really hard to do. But I would say try to stay open-minded to feedback from others. Because sometimes in those moments you're so blinded that you no longer have the perspective. And if you're getting the same message from multiple people, you need to listen to that. So trying to stay open-minded or receptive to that feedback.
Sure.
And being prepared to be uncomfortable, right? Like to
Yeah.
kind of face some uncomfortable feelings, and being willing to explore those at least a little bit.
Yeah. I think from a substance use or misuse perspective, there's a lot of great resources out there. And so a lot of people really gravitate towards the 12 steps, and that could be a fantastic fit for that individual. But if it's not, that's okay too. There's actually smart recovery too. It's based on a leading theory in psychology, REBT. So they kind of walk you through some techniques that are based on psychology to help you kind of shift and change those habits and patterns. So there's a lot of good approaches out there. And so just trying to connect to the one that fits your preferences. So if it's 12 steps, that's great. If not, that's okay too. There's alternatives out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's another.
Also, like go.
I was just going to say, there's another modality that people use. It's called motivational interviewing, as you were kind of alluded to that a little bit before, which is really kind of getting into, let's really focus on what your motivation might be and how strong is that motivation, and what happens if you do decide to make this change, and what happens if you don't. And it's a very, introspective sort of thing. Why am I choosing to do this, and why might I choose to do something different?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm also going to throw in the idea of psychotherapy. Hey, what do you know? Psychotherapy can be helpful for some of this work. But this area with addiction, I will say more than a lot of areas in psychotherapy, like most therapists are trained to deal with depression or anxiety, these sorts of things. But addiction is a little more of a specialty. And if you're seeking out treatment for an addiction, whether it's substances or behaviors or something like that, you may want to look around more specifically for someone who does specialize in that area, because not every therapist does. There's some therapists I know who, if it's a chemical dependency issue, for example, they'll be like, oh, that's not for me. I don't feel confident or competent in that area. So you may have to do a little extra digging to kind of look around for someone who really does specialize in that field of work.
Mm-hmm. I was also going to say another hard one, but don't give up. It takes more than one try. So the last time, going through my schooling and reading, I think the last number I heard was 7 attempts before you actually are successful in recovery. So it's, and that's like valiant attempts. So there's going to be ups and downs, and it's going to take a few tries. And 7 is average. You might get it in 2, but you might get it in 15. We don't know. So we want to keep trying until we find the thing that works. Every time you try is a learning opportunity to learn, what did we miss last time and what do we need to work on now? And let's see if we can help you with that, right?
Yeah.
No, for sure. I think it's a good thing to point out that through the science of neuroplasticity, we can rewire our brains, we can change these pathways, and people do get better, right? And so, yeah, it can happen right away. Your first try, second try may take longer, and that's okay, but it is possible.
Yeah.
So a holistic approach, right? Usually the best path is an integrated one.
Mm-hmm.
We've touched on a lot of those things over the course of this boot camp: sleep, nutrition, exercise, connecting with positive people, trying to develop some new healthy habits and patterns.
You guys, we've said it all. Actually, we haven't said it all. There's a lot more to say about this, but we've said it all for tonight. Thanks for all of your wonderful insights. We're going to wrap it up for tonight. So please like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, or YouTube. Send your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Tell a few friends. We're looking for people, particularly in Iceland. We're looking for some South America folks. Anywhere in Africa, we would love to get. So just spread us around. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.